Hello, welcome back to JM Football. This is your Day 3 Senior Bowl recap. It is all brought to you by Corona. Left to right on your screen, it is the Football Grump, Bobby Skinner. My name is Justin Penik, and today we are going to lead off with talking about the quarterbacks. Fellas, we got to pay the bills. I would say through 2 days, the quarterbacks have been underwhelming. It's either A,
3
coach.
days.
3 days. Well, they were a little bit better today, especially on the American side, led by Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Riley Leonard, and Seth Hennigan. The national side, they really struggled today. But, fellas, let's get right to it. Let's talk quarterbacks. What are our overall thoughts, Day 3, or even on these quarterbacks just overall in their weeks?
Yeah, do want to spend time mostly focusing on Day 3 because people have seen our first 2-day recaps if they're watching this one most likely. But overall, lackluster, right? Just lack of wow there. But at least today with Jalen Milroe and Jackson Dart, you had big completions down the field. Jalen Milroe found Jack Besh, the TCU wide receiver. It's a little bit of a leak out play, but still made the play. Had another throw over the middle, and then Jackson Dart 20 yards. Right in front of the safeties, middle of the field, making a throw like that, which you like to see for guys who haven't, Dart, who hasn't really plays in a bit of a fake offense at Ole Miss, and then Milroe, who, really struggled throwing the ball this past year. So it was at least good to see that. Overall, I think it's pretty lackluster. But I will come away from this saying, because there's some negatives, is that probably Jackson Dart had the best week. I know Dylan Gabriel did some, quick game stuff, but I thought he really struggled today, especially when you got in the red zone.
Quarterback, University of Oregon. Penik.
Wow.
Not as good as those two guys.
No, not as good as those.
Those were good quarterbacks.
But even with Dart today, right? They're running red zone drills. They run a play action boot. The running back is in the flat. Not wide open, but it's open. Open, throw the ball. He doesn't for some reason because he just doesn't trust his eyes. Scrambles, ends up having to throw the ball away, right? That's the difference between 7 points and 3 points possibly there. And other plays that you just didn't, I go back and forth, and I posted this clip on Twitter of Jackson Dart. Jack throws a hole shot, and it was a good job pre-snap, which I like, where he alerted, two high safeties, and I'm like, oh, God.
We're checking into a run.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's checking into a run because you have the 2 high safeties. He sees that as cover 2. He takes a shot down the hole and gets it, to his credit, gets it to Jack Besh's hands, and then the Georgia linebacker, the Georgia safety, Dan Jackson, comes over and smacks him and dislodges the football. So, I'll take that from Jackson Dart. But, this was at least a day where we saw them push the ball down the field.
Right.
I don't want to belabor the point on any of the stuff you already pointed out, but so I'm not trying to be negative, but I thought Tyler Show missed somebody wide open right in front of him in team drills in the red zone. He had somebody dragging across, I think it was a tight end or a running back, was dragging across completely uncovered, and he just didn't even see. He was right in his face. Didn't see him.
And you may have even seen this video on Twitter, because Elijah Arroyo caught a touchdown, quote unquote, on that play, and then drop kicks a football into the stands, which I like the Arroyo part of that. I just like the energy. But like you said, just passes up wide open. He can't, Tyler Show can't get hit, so he sits back there. He finds Arroyo on the bootleg, and throws it to him for a touchdown. The national team, which is Dylan Gabriel, Tyler Show, and
Taylor Eldersma.
Taylor Eldersma out of Canada. They were really bad. I mean, I had Dylan Gabriel at 1-5 with an interception today and 11 on 11. He also struggled in 7 on 7 was actually a little more frustrating for me from Dylan Gabriel because 7 on 7 you need to get the ball out. And I started timing it, and it was taking him over 4 seconds in red zone 7 on 7 to get the ball out. Taylor Eldersma, you saw him, show his warts where he's in the red zone, doesn't really know what he's looking at, and takes 2 legit sacks. Not like, probably would have been sacked. No, everyone has surrounded him because he's held on to the football for so long. And then Show, one of his, completions was a bad play. So the national team, I actually thought their quarterbacks had what was their worst day when the space got, close, and you really can see how quick these guys process in the red zone.
So let me ask you, both of you, a little bit of a bigger picture question. One of the things that we were looking for down here is there going to be any quarterback that's going to solidify himself as QB3? Maybe Jackson Dart. Is that who we're going to go with after this week? I still do think the entire week's body of work it is Dylan Gabriel, but did Dylan Gabriel have himself too bad of a day where now Jackson Dart kind of takes that out of the best QBs here?
Well, here's what I'll say is I don't think, and you go, is nobody did anything here to separate themselves in a good way.
Right.
Well, to the frame of your question is nobody solidified anything down here.
No.
Yeah.
It's solidified that you probably aren't taking any of these guys in the late first.
Well, the other thing
at
too
least.
is that we still have the game on Saturday, and I could see Jalen Milroe pulling something down and running for 20 yards or whatever. Like the game, there could still be some highlight plays where some people fall in love with somebody and they solidify themselves as a quarterback 3. But in the practices, I would say nobody solidified themselves as QB3.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and the
absolutely.
practices is the important thing
Right.
too. Where
Yes.
the interviews is a huge part of this, and if you're able to woo a team and get a team that's interested in you, or get a team kind of more intrigued, where in the combine where you're going to talk with these guys maybe a little longer in a top 30 visit, and you talk with them even longer there. That's where we learned of like Michael Penik's last year. It's like, oh, this guy kind of swept me off my feet, and I'm sure he swept the Atlanta Falcons off their feet. And I'm like, almost like that part of the Senior Bowl is more important than what you're actually doing on the practice field. But we didn't get a chance to talk to any of the quarterbacks this year. So what we were able to see was on the practice field, and nobody kind of blew us away there.
One final note on Jackson Dart that I don't think we've talked about at all is I think I counted throughout the whole week 7 fumbles on snaps.
Yeah.
Like sometimes there's bad days, and I think he had like 3 on the first day or whatever. But it's not like it ever got cleaned up throughout the week. He had one on a shotgun snap
That
today.
was right in his chest, too. It wasn't
Yeah.
like one that was a little high to the side or anything.
And like we're not right there. I mean, maybe that was snapped prematurely or something, but I don't think it was.
Moving on from the quarterbacks, on the national side, we'll start. I'd come away from this saying Tez Johnson had the best, I think, consistent week. Gray Zabel from North Dakota State in the trenches probably did, for at least on the offensive side. But it's Tez Johnson. Every time I focused in on him in team drills, he was winning. And he was honestly the guy that the quarterbacks like to throw to the most often. One-on-ones, it wasn't even fair, like the way he was able to pull away from guys. Little times where he took too long in his release, and that's what you'll get at the All-Star game practices. But I thought he was the consistently best one. And, I've come to, value that, because you've seen shorter guys like Tank Dell, Calvin Austin come here, and you're like, okay, well, of course they're quick. They're going to win on one-on-ones. And Tank Dell's been a legitimately good player in the NFL, and Calvin Austin is at least a starter,
A role player
on a Pittsburgh Steelers team that probably wants to upgrade from him. But at least he found his way as a starter and has created some big plays down the field with the speed despite his size. So I do come away from this not saying I want Tez Johnson at the top of the second round, but I do think he's going to find a role on some team.
Yeah, the best defender against Tez Johnson this week has been the sideline. It's like the only time he hasn't had a completion is when he didn't get both feet in bounds.
Yeah.
Who was the standout for you, Justin, on the national offense?
I mean, it is Gray Zabel. The only guy that really challenged him was interior defensive lineman Jamari Caldwell. And that's just because the dude's 342 pounds, and I think Jamari Caldwell and Cam Jackson are two of the strongest guys down here. Maybe like a Shamar Stewart you think is just as strong as those guys. But in terms of weight, those two guys were strong, and they showed the strength off, especially Cam Jackson on the other side. But Gray Zabel just didn't lose.
And he's the type
he's
the type of guy who needs to come down here and do that because again, North Dakota State. I understand they play Colorado's and stuff, but had never had played tackle there. Like, come down here and win, because there's been other guys. Cody Mock, who's with the Bucks. He came down here, had a good week. He got drafted in the second round, so it does make a difference for those guys specifically. I understand NDSU is not even like a small school anymore, or ever was, but I think that's an important week for him. We got no Mike Green out of Marshall. I've been saying Tulane all week. No Mike Green out of Marshall. So you didn't see, but edge guy, Justin, that you highlighted.
Yeah.
And there's, again, another guy that let's go figure out what he is. Someone who had 10.5 sacks last year, Central Arkansas's edge, David Walker.
Yeah, David Walker, and you're saying Central Arkansas, and you do your little look up on PFF to see where he's ranked in, total pressures and win rate and all this stuff, and just, where he kind of is. And it's like, oh, well, this is an FCS school. This isn't an FBS school. So you have to look at a whole other different categories. So, if you want to talk about, again, this whole talking point of Gray Zabel, you need to come down here to show what you're about because you're playing lesser competition. I mean, there's nobody that maybe needed to do it more than a guy like David Walker, and he dominated. And it kind of took this day 3, he really stood out, and he won almost every single 1v1 rep that he had. And he did it in numerous ways. He won with power. He's 267 pounds, 6'1". I mean, for today's age of edge rushers, that's a pretty good size from an edge rusher. So he showed power, and then just when you think his final rep, he's going up against a tackle that I think he went up before. Just when you think he's going to show power, does a little ghost technique, gets around. I mean, he was hitting that coach that was like mimicking the quarterback. He was hitting that coach all week, and he had to continue to apologize to him because he kept getting back there and he kept reaching him. So David Walker did himself a lot of favors.
I don't know what he was viewed at before. Obviously, he had to be good enough to get an invite here. I think whatever he is, he's at least a draftable player. You mentioned the matchup that he had. It was Anthony Belton out of NC State, who I thought has had a pretty damn good week. And I just love the way he sequenced two moves together in that, right? Where, like you said, the first one brings some pop. And that's, Anthony Belton's had some losses here. He has not had losses where someone really brought power to him. And David Walker out of Central Arkansas did that. And then their next matchup, like you said, now Anthony Belton's like, all right, I got someone who's going to challenge me with some strength. Bam, get around that corner, right? He's a little ready for that, get around the corner. And he's someone who, like you mentioned, you noticed yesterday, I watched a little bit of him against Marcus Bowe in the run game yesterday in team drills, make some plays. So, again, another guy who you come into this not knowing who he is, not even knowing Central Arkansas is a college with a football team, and you walk away saying, we got to go find some film on this guy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Grump, who was like your like another standout on the national team today for you?
Today, I would say it would be somebody that I was a little bit critical of earlier in the week, and that was Florida State defensive back Azareye'h Thomas. I think that each day he's gotten a little bit better. The first day it looked like he couldn't cover anyone. Yesterday it looked like he could cover people but not finish a play. And today it looked like he had a pretty good day. I think he had a pick in one-on-ones in the red zone. He was blanketing everybody all week. And, maybe he's not going to live up to the first-round buzz that he had coming down here. But, again, like if you can show that you get better each day down here, that's exactly what you want to show people.
Yeah, and on that play, just like the patience out of him, right, where – again, these all-star games, you get these receivers who, these 20 different steps on their release, 20 different stutters, and he just stays patient. He gets into his route, gets into a trail technique, and makes an interception, which, you don't really see a ton of interceptions down here. What you definitely don't see is interceptions in one-on-ones, and he was able to do that on a really nice play. Another guy on the national side that I just want to highlight, I'm going to go look at, what he did is Harold Fannin Jr., the Bowling Green tight end who had 117 catches this past year. Want to see how he did as a blocker. They use him as a move blocker. Today they lined him at fullback. He had a nice kick out on Landon Jackson, where I think I mentioned this shortly yesterday, where now I am intrigued on what this guy can do. Even if he's not the smoothest mover or anything and he's kind of got a little straight line speed, at least I can use him as a move blocker, and that's exactly the way I viewed Isaiah Likely out of Coastal Carolina a couple years ago down here, where you see the speed, you see the straight line ability, you see that, but can you be a move blocker? Because we're not going to line you up in line and ask you to dig a defensive end out, but can you be useful as a blocker and not just a net negative all the time? And I thought Fannin did as good of a job down here as he was asked.
And I think there's one other guy on offense who showed up from time to time yesterday, and then I think he had a couple nice plays today as well as wide receiver from Illinois, Pat Bryant. Had a couple of really nice catches in the end zone and in red zone drills. 2 days in a row. I wasn't super impressed with him yesterday or the first day, but now it's somebody that I'm definitely going to look at very critically and look at his Illinois film and see what's there.
Justin, there was a very important prospect you wanted to talk about, or are we not talking about him on day 3?
No, we're talking about him on day 3. We're talking about them on day 3. There's some other guys that maybe you want to bring up too. But why not talk about Corona, because they've sent us down here to Mobile, Alabama. Today's day 3 recap is sponsored by Corona, and you know what I was trying to be? A fan who never loses. And here's what I mean. My team, we all know they don't win every single week, but even when they lose, what am I doing? I'm still loving the game, because whether it's a big deep ball that we actually did see some today, or some third and short conversions, or just a great tailgate out in the parking lot, there's always something to cheer for, and the best beer to pair with awesome moments. How about a Corona? Corona's all about finding the max amount of joy within every moment of the game. Win or lose, at home or on the road, it's the perfect beer to go along with watching football and all the moments that come with it. So cheers to everyone who loves the game beyond the scoreboard. Corona, for the fans who never lose. Get yours at ordercorona.com for 21 plus. Relax responsibly. Corona Extra Beer, imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois.
Yeah, so some last notes on the national team. I thought Purdue offensive tackle Marcus Bowe, who had some first round, but had his best day as offensive tackle, where I kind of viewed him as a guard the first few days. Settled in a bit. And then Virginia Tech defensive tackle, who's got some love down here. I don't think we've spent too much
Aeneas
time.
Peebles?
Aeneas Peebles.
Yes.
Like, I thought I think Gray Zabel's worst play of the week was Aeneas Peebles.
Yeah.
So that obviously speaks to what Peebles can do.
Peebles has been a guy that stood out through all 3 days, particularly in the early part of the week in 11 on 11 against the run. And then as the week has kind of gone on, maybe even starting to learn your opponent a little bit, he's attacked differently. And today, he really did a nice job in 1v1. So his consensus board ranking right now is 129. That's around like Ty Robinson, who's also down here. I would say Aeneas Peebles did himself a lot of favors, and he may start creeping up closer to the top 100. Not only was he good in the 1v1 stuff, he got better throughout the week, and his 11 on 11 defending the run was really good too.
Are we ready to move on to the American side? Or do you have anybody else?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some receivers, like we never talked about Jalen Royals. He had a decent week. Jaden Higgins and
Iowa State.
Jalen Royals is from Utah State. Coming in with the yards, I think he might have missed time this year, maybe not. But his yards per route run was 3, which is insanely high, leading the Senior Bowl crop down here. Jaden Higgins, he was a dude this week. And Xavier Restrepo, he was a dude this week too.
One other thing I want to add, and this goes for both teams, but I might as well just transition it this way. I think that on Saturday, what's going to show up is something that we haven't talked about at all because it's really hard to judge in practice. But I think the entire group of running backs down here are very good. One thing that stood out to me specifically today is that USC running back Jaquavius Marks has really, really smooth hands for a running back. All the running backs down here are pretty impressive.
Yeah. So let's move on to the American team, and I'm going to get Grump's mistake made me more excited about this player today because we watched Billy Bowman Jr., the safety out of Oklahoma, and watched him day one. He got an interception on Jalen Milroe on a one-on-one drill, really nice undercut. And so day two, I'm focusing on him, and I thought he was an outside corner. And I'm like, I don't know if he has the feet for outside corner. And then today I found out he's a safety. He dominated one-on-ones where I think he has nickel coverage skills. He had three pass break, and I'm not talking like got back into the play, like legit just covered, like ran the route for the receiver type of pass breakups. And then, we're talking with a scout off to the side, and you're like, man, this Billy Bowman guy from Oklahoma, he could play some ball. He's a safety, has 12 interceptions over the last 3 years, so that ball skills. And, I was talking, and he was telling me, yeah, he's a chance taker, but you kind of have to be a chance taker at safety in the NFL. You don't get ball production without being a chance taker. You got to be smart. You got to study film, but I think I watched a couple full games of Jesse Bates, the all-pro safety from the Falcons this year, and when you actually watch him for 70 plays in a game, what you realize is that what he doesn't do is just play his basic role on every play. They take chances. They see what formation and stuff, and they learn off your tendencies, and they take chances. And Billy Bowman, I'm excited to go see how he got all those interceptions because down here, he showed good ball skills and just man coverage drills, right? So if he can do that in man coverage drills, to see what he's able to do in zone coverage from the deep safety spot, I'm really like a guy that I think I've kind of fell in love with while being down here.
And another DB that I think stood out for probably the third day in a row, UCF corner Mac McWilliams had another really, really good day. And I would view this as like, playing on the American side against SEC competition, this is a step up for a UCF corner, in my opinion. So he looked like he belonged. He looked very, very good again today. I'm excited to go through some UCF defense. Yeah,
absolutely. And they had a corner on the other side, too, who had, a decent day, a decent week as well.
Yeah.
There wasn't any other corners or corner DBs that stood out to me today on the national side. I will say TCU wide receiver Jack Besh. Just somebody who's like kind of gets open, right? Like you see his releases, they're quick, efficient. You see his route running, it's good. You see him make tough catches outside of the Georgia safety smacking him today, but made a lot of tough catches. You're like, okay, is this guy that's going to blow you away, who's going to go in the second round and pull away and just wow you with athleticism? No, but I do think he looks like someone down here. When you pop on the film, you say this is probably going to be a useful player in the NFL, whether you're putting him on the outside or the slot.
When you combine speed like that with very crisp route running, what you get is what we saw, which is like wide separation. Like
right.
A lot of times there's not even a guy within 5 yards of him. That's how open he was getting.
Justin, me and you noticed a late addition today. He was wearing number 14, which was held by Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M, who was the 6'5", 280 edge rusher who didn't practice today. His name is Danny Strigo out of Minnesota. I was like, who is this guy? They had him moving all over the line, edge, defensive tackle. A sack, he was squeezing down the defensive end, was making plays in the run game. Again, like, if there's someone who I'm, going to watch the game at, because, I'll watch the game, but I'm not really focusing, just kind of watching casually because I've seen. That's someone in there. Like, he came out here on day 3, did well. I want to see what he looks like in the game. So Danny Strigo, who was wearing number 14 out of Minnesota, a late addition who I thought had a really stellar day when a lot of people are checked out on day 3.
Yeah, took Shamar Stewart's number. And speaking of Shamar, a guy on the defensive side of the ball, I think we might have mentioned him briefly yesterday, but with how much these teams have run the ball this week, I actually feel like some linebackers and safeties have stood out. I mean, you talked about some safeties earlier. But Shamar James, interior linebacker from Florida, I think he was the best linebacker down here. And here's how I at least judged it. Grump, I'm going to throw it to you, and maybe you could tell me some specific stuff about his game. But here's how I would judge it. When he's on the field, he's always around the ball. When he's off the field and the American offense is running the ball, it's a successful play. I'm like, do I see Shamar James on the field and a successful run play? Nope. He checks back in, and they ain't going anywhere. So he was everywhere through 2 days. He also registered one of the fastest speeds he might have been the fastest speed from day 2 among the tight end and linebackers here down in Mobile.
Yesterday, I was kind of parked in front of the linebackers doing drills, and I think I had said that really what stood out to me is that the fundamentals, the difference between him and the other linebackers was astronomical. Like, it was clear that he was very comfortable.
Yep.
And today in one-on-ones, I focused him covering running backs. And sometimes some of these drills are like, I don't really expect the linebacker to even have a chance. And you have guys like Trevor Etienne. He's getting a pass breakup. He's blanketing Trevor Etienne out of Georgia. He also he got a little bit burned by SMU running back whose name is escaping me, but is a very,
converted receiver too.
Yeah,
by the
very,
way.
very fast. Got behind him and made up speed, watched for the hands, and made the pass breakup in the end zone. So just really advanced stuff coming from a linebacker coming out of Florida.
A lot of times you see the linebackers be super grabby in those one-on-ones, and
Not
he wasn't
at all.
that at all.
No.
And he was still able to stick. And anytime I watch a running back linebacker one-on-one, the running back is supposed to win. If the running back doesn't smoke him, I'm actually not happy with that rep from the running back. And that never really happened with Shamar James out of Florida. I thought he was the best linebacker down here.
Really excited to see how he tests because, Bobby, I feel like it's super rare to now have the linebacker that tests well, that's fast, also have the play instincts and the awareness because linebacker and safety, we talk about this all the time. I feel like it's 2 of those spots and 2 of those positions where it almost, if you have a slow 40, it almost doesn't even fully matter because that's a position where you have to play fast, where you have to think fast and process fast. That's more important than how fast, physically how fast you are. But it seems like Shamar James, at least from Mobile, you got to go and watch the film, you got to go and watch the tape. At least Shamar James seems like he has kind of both instincts and athleticism to his game. Right now he has a consensus board ranking of 290. Obviously, that stuff is going to change as more boards get out there, but Shamar James is going to be a guy that you think after this week is going to skyrocket.
I want to finish off with this. All 3 of us giving us a player that we thought stood out that we did not know who they were coming in. For me, I'd like to say Georgia wide receiver Arian Smith. Look at his stats. He had 800 yards, 17 yards per catch. I thought he was an outside receiver. He was someone who I saw win on all 3 levels, which is not, sometimes you see a guy win in the quick game. Some guy, can run in a straight line. Saw him win on all 3 levels and just seemed to be the most targeted receiver by the American quarterbacks, right? And I actually value that because you can find that trust in those guys and then make those catches. I remember not comparing the Puka Nacua, but I remember the first day a couple years ago, and that was the only day that Puka Nacua practiced. He was like the only guy they targeted, and then Nacua ended up being what he has been. Obviously, Arian Smith hasn't been on that level or even close to it, but I thought he was just like the most comfortable receiver being, targeted on all 3 levels of the field.
Grump?
I mean, there's a bunch of people I could mention. I think somebody who caught my eye that I had knew absolutely nothing about that I'm going to try my hardest to find film for would be this Sacramento State offensive lineman, Jackson Slater. I think I even criticized him earlier as Deion Walker couldn't beat him. Maybe that was a bad take. In team drills, it looked like he was blowing holes wide open in the running game. So definitely somebody that I want to check out going forward, Sacramento State offensive lineman Jackson Slater.
Justin, why don't you finish this off?
I love Cam Jackson. That's my guy. Also, RJ Open. You probably never heard of him, or maybe you did because he was playing a national championship game. He went to St. Peter's Prep. I went to St. Peter's Prep. He had a decent finish to the week, especially day 3. Had some run stops, used his hands, maybe got a sack or 2 throughout the week. There you go. RJ Open, St. Peter's Prep. Shout out. How do you like that? Anything else?
No, we'll be finishing up our coverage over on our Talking Giants podcast, so make sure to go check that out. We'll give our full thoughts on the entire week, where this is more a day 3 recap. Just want to say, appreciate you guys watching these. The Senior Bowl. We tell everyone that this is our favorite week of the year to do this job, because it's watching ball, talking ball, having a good time. So appreciate you guys very much.
Yes.
And appreciate the Football Grump.
Yes, was
for
going to say.
joining us. Robert Smith, we miss you. We love you.
Yes. The Football Grump of the Just Giants podcast. Producer Jeff, behind the camera, editor Jeff, crushes it, kills it, helps us out every single year. Appreciate all of you who watches it, because wouldn't happen without you. We'll see you next year down here in Mobile, Alabama. Peace.